In this podcast, we look at the defeat of West Brom, look ahead at Reading, and answer your podcast questions. This is the Boro Breakdown podcast, and this is all your Boro Matchday chatter in a pod.
Support. Curtis Fleming is there on the edge of the area. Fleming for Craig Hignett. Hit it, Higgy. Higgy hits the treble!
Avenelli coming alive again. Juninho wants the ball played to him. Avenelli spots out Emerson!
Welcome back to the Boro Breakdown podcast with Tom and Dana this week. No Johnny this week as he is on a tour of a sparkling water factory, so he'll be back for the next podcast. But yesterday, Boro's winning run was halted at the Hawthorns by West Brom. Boro losing 2-0 to 2 goals from Daryl Dike. Dana, you were there yesterday. How are you feeling after the defeat against West Brom?
Not too different to last week, to be honest. Obviously, it's not good to go to an away ground for the first time and not win. Although, given the fact that I'd said that Boro were unbreakable last week, I probably should have expected it. We were probably due a defeat, to be fair, but there wasn't really anything that redeeming about that away day. Obviously, we didn't have anything to celebrate, unfortunately, but I'm not too downbeat about it. I think spirits are very much still high. Obviously, last week we were incredibly positive, and I still feel the same. I still really enjoy watching this team, with the exception of yesterday, but we'll get on to that. And I still really like this setup that we've got, and I still believe that we can get promoted this season. So yeah, my opinion hasn't really changed too much, although it isn't great that we've lost because we haven't really been used to this over the past couple of weeks. But it is what it is. It's sort of as you were for me.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with that. I mean, as much as yesterday's game wasn't an easy one to watch, we were still playing the same way. We've played fantastically over the last 5 games, and it was probably going to happen at some point. It's just a shame it happened in a away day at West Brom where there was nothing really good about that game at all. But we also got Johnny to share his thoughts before he left to go to the Sparkling Water Factory.
So, Boro lost 2-0. How am I feeling about it? To be honest, I was quite impressed actually with West Brom yesterday for a number of different reasons, and I thought they were thoroughly deserving of the win yesterday, and how they set up and how they were able to have formation rotations and have some really fluid strategies going into the game yesterday. And to be honest, how were they able to control the game with 30% possession? Firstly, I think obviously game state, going 2-0 down after 10 minutes really does help them in their mission trying to nullify Boro. And, we could have went out there and been really aggressive in the game after that 2 goals, but we weren't. They just really nullified us throughout. But what really interested me about West Brom is just their use of formation rotation and the using of their defending strategies of, delay, deny, dictate and defend when you're outnumbered as well. So those 4 phases of defensive play were really perfect for them yesterday. And, the fluidity of how they were able to play in a 4-2-3-1 and that in itself, gives you a double bit. It gives you a really solid base with the double pivot. It allows wide rotations. It covers your full backs when you need to if they were able to push up. But also it controls the central spaces, and that's how they were probably able to really dictate the game yesterday, in my opinion. But for me, that 4-2-3-1 in itself, it provides a really good staggered defensive presence. And when you're in that mid and low block in itself and making it hard to, try to penetrate the thirds or try through the lines, it really does give you that stability. And that's why you're seeing so many teams utilize that formation probably a few seasons ago. But also, you see really good teams now use that 4-2-3-1 to help have that fluidity through the phases. And I feel through the phases yesterday, I found some little key things which I thought was really cool and interesting from them. Although they were trying to play a 4-2-3-1 at times, their defensive structure started in something a little bit different when we had a goal kick. And that started in a 4-3-2-1 formation when Stefan had the ball. DK was the central player, and he was able to try and cut off a line between Smith and McNair. You also had Jed Wallace and Dean Garner as those 2 players just in front of the midfield 3 of Swift, Malungu, and I'm trying to remember the last name, but anyway, the midfield three in itself. And how that kind of looked was, it tried to force Middlesbrough along and also made it really difficult for us to play out, because their aim really was to try and solidify that centre space. But as it obviously came into that as well, what I did notice, in that 4-3-2-1 shape, it's kind of like a deny phase, because you try and stop the ball coming into Tuba, and you try and cause an error on that either right hand side, on the left hand side, or whenever Boro are trying to build up, they're just trying to deny Middlesbrough playing through the thirds. But what I would say about Boro in those moments is that we actually are a really good side of playing through that initial first phase, because we have multiple ways of doing it. So if we were to do that, they were able to change shape ever so slightly. If we were to quickly do that, they would still be in that 4-3-2-1 shape. But if we were able to play through, and if we did play through at a time, they would shift to a 4-4-2 formation, like in the defensive transition, and that in itself like delays quite a lot of, it tries to delay Middlesbrough, because if you are transitioning in, a 4-4-2 is a really good formation, because it's really simple. It enables you to be compact, it keeps you shape, and the transition quickly to do that is really good. And you see Swift move on to that left hand side, and wherever the ball was, you would see the defense, the midfielders shift into that. So say if it was on the left hand side of play, you'd obviously see Swift move to that left wing role, and then you'd have Dean Garner play as like a central forward with Daryl Dike, and then also from there you would probably shift even more. But if Middlesbrough were able to get through that third of the 4-4-2 and go on the defensive third, you would see them shift into a 4-5-1, and that's where you kind of see all of the rotations really shift completely. And then that was made it really difficult, and also for them to create so many significant numerical advantages in the box at times. There was 8 or 9 players in the box for West Bromwich Albion, and Middlesbrough only had like 3 or 4 players, and obviously you're not going to get the probably offensive presence that you want at times. And for me, I thought West Brom just defended really well across all the thirds of the pitch. They nullified space, they stopped us from playing through the thirds at times, and also they just limited us to long range efforts, and to an extent where we couldn't really get near the central of the goal to really create an opportunity. But one really key thing that I'm quite disappointed that we didn't do is probably play the long diag, because if a team is really compact in that shape and not have that width of the probably the half space at a maximum, with us not being able to do that, for me, we won't be able to do that. But then also with that, if we were to play the long ball in the diagonal phase, you try and pull players out and you just try and pin them back and get them out of shape a little bit quicker. But our tempo was off. The game state in itself, we looked a bit shocked, 2-0 down, and also we didn't really try and play to our strengths as much as we did. But I think it's all credit to West Brom. I thought they were really, really good yesterday, and they were thoroughly deserving 3 points. I have no complaints, but Carlos Carboin has done a really good tactical number. His tweaks and the way that they were able to press and aggressively do so was really impressive and really cool to watch. Now that I've watched the game back ever so slightly, and it was painful, but when you take it as an independent view, it was really interesting to watch them play, and they're really well coached. So disappointing result for us, not the end of the world, but they were a good side. And is it the end of the world? And is it going to be the way that teams play against us? I don't think so, because different teams have different strengths and weaknesses. So it's not really you finding someone out. It was just a case of they beat us on the day. They were really good in defensive transition, nullified space, and the game state of being 2-0 up really helped them in the early stages. But guys, have a great pod. I'll speak to you soon.
Cheers for that, Johnny. And now looking at this week, it's all about twos this week. It's been all about threes for the last few weeks, successive 3-1 wins. There's been other things around threes
Your
as well.
30th birthday.
Yeah, don't need reminding of that, Dana.
I think that actually might be the third time in a row that we've mentioned that. So we are keeping with the threes. No, it isn't.
But yeah, well, I mean, we're going with twos this week anyway. It was 2 goals in 2 minutes from Daryl Dike, which gave the Baggies all 3 points. Going back to 3 slightly a little bit there at the Hawthorns. But Dana, what was your overall assessment of the performance yesterday?
You know what? I thought we were very, very predictable, and it was the first time under Michael Carrick that I was bored watching us because it was very clear that we were trying to shift it from right to left and then back to right again, but we weren't really penetrating that West Brom backline, and that is all credit to West Brom and the way that Corberan set his team up because he essentially made it boring to watch because he limited the space between the lines, which, you think about Riley McGree and that very fluid role he has, he will pick up those pockets in between that defensive and midfield line, and we just weren't really seeing that. His influence didn't really tell in that game, and we had a lot of possession. I was looking at FOTMob earlier, and we had 334 passes in West Brom's half, which is a massive contrast to their 85 in ours. But for all of that sort of pretty possession play and build up, we just didn't really have the answers to their chess match, really. And the fact that they basically said to us, try to break us down. We didn't really have the answer to that. And it was disappointing. I don't know why Carrick didn't put Dan Barlasser on, because thinking about that game, he has the passing range whenever you have problems in midfield trying to break down an attack. I do think you look towards a player that can break that deadlock, and he did help that happen against QPR last week. So I think the passing range that Dan Barlasser has, he's probably able to do that, but we didn't see him, which was a massive surprise to me. I was just really bored. We didn't get Archer in behind. We didn't stretch the game. We didn't have those runs being made off the ball down the right channel in particular. And I thought that right side was quite problematic for us. Of course, the 2 goals came down that down that area. And I think where we see Tommy Smith tuck into a more sort of right-sided centre-back position at times did kind of mess us up a little bit, because they were able to get in behind, they were able to get down those channels, and it was just it was a bit of a crestfallen sort of situation when we're 2-0 down within 10 minutes. It was a 2-minute period that really decided the game, unfortunately, and we didn't have the answers to it.
Yeah, I'd absolutely have to agree with that. I think the word you said there, predictable, I really kind of picked up on myself. I did think at times yesterday it was reminding me a little bit of the kind of end times under Wilder last season, where we were going right to left, had a lot of possession, but weren't kind of really doing much with it. I mean, we did look a lot more positive than that yesterday, so I don't want to compare it exactly to that. But it did seem like they packed out the middle areas and just made it very hard for us to kind of do anything of note with the ball. And I was probably equally as surprised that we didn't see Barlassi yesterday. I think we did make some changes trying to affect the game, but maybe not necessarily the right ones. I think I understand putting Crooks on and putting Jones and Ramsey on, trying to affect the game as well. But just think maybe in that middle area, we could have done with something a little bit extra.
Yeah, I think with Crooks as well, when he came on, he was playing in those sort of right-sided areas, which was a surprise to me, because I thought, get the ball in the box. And that isn't me saying because he's tall, because that's not really his strength. It's more that he's decent at poaching. So I was thinking, try to get the ball into the box as much as you can. And we kind of didn't. I mean, in the whole of the game, Ryan Giles had 16 crosses, by far the most of any player of both sides, but an expected assists number of 0.2, which is incredibly low. I think the deliveries, both from open play and from set pieces, again, our corners were really poor. It just wasn't a good day at the office for us, unfortunately. And we are usually great scorers under Michael Carrick. I believe that's the second time now that we've blanked under him. So it's very difficult for a team to stop us from scoring. And I just want to mention what my Baggies friend Ben said. I just want to read this out. Get this, because this is quite something. So he said, our keeper situation is a huge issue. Button can't play anymore, which is a very diplomatic way of saying he's shit. Griffiths just doesn't instill any confidence in the defence. We've gone from keeping so many clean sheets to just keeping none. So thanks for the, thanks for that, Ben. Clean sheet there for you. Then he said, DK just isn't scoring / contributing. There's 2 goals for DK. And then he said, just can't see how we keep you out. So we need to score 2, probably 3, just to get anything. And there we are, Boro blank. So thanks for that, Ben.
Could you give him a message back and just ask him what the lottery numbers aren't going to be in a couple of days' time, so we can just we can put some lottery tickets on ourselves, try and reverse jinx that. Looking at the team selection yesterday, Carrick made 2 changes going into the game with Howson and Force coming back in. Do you think he was maybe looking for the tried and tested there, the changes from QPR, or do you think he maybe set up with those 2 coming back in for a different purpose?
No, I was expecting the changes to sort of be restored. I even said to Ben, I wouldn't be surprised if Ramsey's dropped, Force comes back in, and we sort of revert back to the side that served us so well previously. So I think that game against QPR was just rotation, keep things fresh. A lot of teams in the Championship do seem to be waning a little bit in their energy levels. I think Sunderland are one of them, thankfully. Get in. But I think it's probably the time now where you do start to see teams become a little bit frail in their energy output. We saw it with ourselves last season when we played Sheffield United. We just looked goosed. I remember saying that on that particular pod. So I think it was probably just for rotational purposes. But I was happy to see the Force come back in particular. What surprised me was Paddy McNair coming back in, because I thought, the rotation of both him and Fry, we usually see somebody a little bit more technically gifted, should we say, come up against Paddy McNair, and then Fry will deal with the sort of physicality, the the number 9s that are a big physical problem and present. So I was a bit surprised that Fry wasn't in, because I think DK is definitely not just a one-trick pony. He's not just, the sort of physical presence up front. He's got a little bit more about him as well. But I just thought he was probably a better matchup against Fry than McNair. But, I'm looking at the goals and thinking they didn't come from necessarily those sorts of aerial duel situations. So it kind of is what it is there. But I was happy to see the changes. It's just unfortunate that they didn't get us the win.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with the whole Fry McNair debate. I think when you're bringing in Fry like rotationally to deal with like Ollie McBurney at Sheffield United, it just seems a no-brainer that you'd bring him in to deal with DK as well. I think the only striker physically I've ever seen Dale Fry not do particularly well against was Lukaku last season in the FA Cup, and I think that's understandable considering he's
Carlton Morris as well, Barnsley.
Yeah, I think there is probably that as well. I've just gone off my own head there, but it seems like it might have been a better decision to go with Fry yesterday. I thought he did all right when he came on going up against DK. It was interesting that DK was just hitting the deck quite a lot when they were 2-0 up and wasn't really holding off defenders anymore when he'd forced McNair to go off. But speaking of DK, 2 goals in 2 minutes yesterday. On the subject of the second goal, there was a lot of people talking about it on Twitter, but do you think Zach Steffen can do better there?
You know what? My immediate reaction to that when I saw it go in, I thought Steffen should be doing better there. And I have seen people say that, it was a shot at a point blank range. I'm sorry, that's not a point blank range. The follow-up, where obviously DK converts it, that's point blank range. But I don't know. I just feel like he plants his foot into the ground when he makes that save. So much so that I think his momentum's very much stuck in the ground, and that his reaction maybe is a little bit delayed from that. But I mean, the goal itself, it starts from a long punt upfield from the goalkeeper Griffiths. Very difficult to say that, Griffiths. There's just too much going on there for my tongue. But McNair heads it back out, and we're sort of in a central midfield position. And there's some really good build-up play, really intricate passing from West Brom, I do have to say. But then Darragh Lenihan half commits himself to DK. I think our defensive shape is a bit of a mess here, to be fair. And then DK plays a nice give-a-go with Jed Wallace. DK then, as Wallace finds Swift on the left of McNair, about 10 yards out from our 18-yard box, makes a run beyond Lenihan and gets between both him and Giles. And Tom, a question for you. Out of the whole West Brom team, which 2 players do you not want to give any license to create to?
That'd be Jed Wallace and John Swift.
And which 2 players did Boro give license to create to?
I think that would be Jed Wallace and John Swift.
Exactly. So that was really disappointing because we're essentially giving their two most creative outlets through passing the ability to get a very good striker in Daryl DK in behind, and then of course what happens. When you have a sort of attack in that position where you've got a defender that's got between two defenders, you want to sort of narrow that gap and put them off as much as you can. And Giles does that, but it's a rather tame effort, I have to say, from DK. There's not much power or conviction behind it as such, but obviously, as I said, Stefan sort of plants his foot into the ground, and then he's not really able to react in time to try to get that rebound. But yeah, I mean, after the first one, I don't know whether it was picked up, but Boro fans were very supportive of the team. You know, we were singing Super Michael Carrick incredibly loudly. And then I think about a minute and 30 seconds later, we went and conceded again. So it's sort of like, right, we have the sort of balloon has burst there in the away end, and it was quite subdued from then on. But the first goal was the same, you know, affording key players space. It was Jed Wallace that obviously supplied Daryl DK for the first goal. There was a suspicion of offside for me, but I think having seen it back, I think he's onside. And again, you know, that right channel where we do see Tommy Smith usually he's very good, but I thought he had a poor game yesterday, and they were getting into those really dangerous, advantageous positions. And then when you've got players like John Swift and Jed Wallace, you know, they're going to punish him more times than not. And I think the game was unfortunately sold up from there, because from then on, their game plan was spot on, and Boro didn't really look like breaching that back line.
Yeah, and I think just to pick up on the whole John Swift and Jed Wallace thing there, I think shortly before the first goal, I actually heard on the commentary that Jed Wallace had stayed down after a tackle kind of further up the pitch, and I was like, please be this scenario where he's going to go off injured and they're just going to lose this creative force. And just unfortunately that really didn't happen. But like you say, I think those two goals gave West Brom the platform to go on and win it for sure. How do you think West Brom were able to stop Boro from playing yesterday?
Well, I think it's like what I said and what Johnny said. It was really compacting the space between the lines so that we couldn't really operate in the areas that we do tend to. And they did. There was one point in the second half where Boro were quite advanced, and you know, we had quite a high line, and the play was very condensed in West Brom's half, and you could tell that what their game plan was. There's a very negative perception about parking the bus, thanks to Jose Mourinho, probably, but it worked for them. So I have to say, fair play. I can't really complain about the result, because the way that West Brom performed, the way that they nullified us in closing down the space, in basically putting two walls between Boro and the goal. There's so many times where you look back at the game, and I've seen a few clips on Y-Scout this morning, where you've got Aaron Ramsey coming on the pitch. He tries to look for a way to try to like sort of thread a ball through, just something to be able to unlock the door. It's completely shut off. Turns around, goes back to Hayden Hackney. He does the same, tries to play that forward pass that we usually see Hayden Hackney do. He has to pass back to the defence. And it was that was the theme of the game, I think, where Boro were just trying to find these spaces, these runs. But to be honest, as a fan, when I'm watching that sort of game, I'm thinking, right, quicken the tempo. We have such good off the ball movement that we are able to take players out of positions and then, you know, be able to sort of take those spaces that have been vacated and you know, do what we do best to create from it. But we just didn't do that. And that's why I was really disappointed. You know, Cameron Archer had 22 touches in that game, the second lowest of anybody that started that match from both sides. So we didn't get him involved in the game. I think Chuba was on 26 touches, so not that far in front of Archer. So our key influences were just not influencing the game enough because of the blockage that basically West Brom were putting on that football match, being able to really condense the game and compact their structure, which was really good. And maybe that's something that we have to keep in mind for upcoming games, because Reading will do the exact same thing.
Yeah, on that point, we had a question coming from Steve who said, do you think this game and last week against QPR have given teams a blueprint on how to nullify us? I suppose against QPR last week, it's to a lesser extent because they did lose, but they did kind of hold out for quite a while. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always a a way to nullify a team. And I think with us, it's definitely trying to limit the influence and negate the strengths of our key players like McGree, like Atpom, like Archer when you take him out the game, as we saw yesterday. But I think we should usually have enough in us, being the second top scorers in the championship, to break through anyway. And I mean, we've got somebody on the bench that didn't come off yesterday, as I mentioned, in Dan Barlaser, that I think should have come on. And because he broke the helped break the deadlock against QPR, I think he's the type of player to be able to do that. But it's something to be mindful of. I think these low block teams are playing a low block for a reason, because I think they'll probably see that and know that Boro have a little tiny potential of weakness to not be able to penetrate a backline. But we do that more times than not, so I'm not too worried about it. But we'll see, because teams, I think, know our strengths, and they probably now know how to negate our strengths as well and turn it into a bit of a weakness.
On a very kind of similar subject, we had a question from Callum Q, who said, if teams are going to sit deep and more compact against us and look to play on the break, should we be starting Barlaser more so we can be more creative from deep positions and unlock the defence? Obviously, we already know your thoughts on that, and I would tend to agree as well. But just to kind of switch that question up a little bit, if you're looking at starting Barlaser more, who would you look to take out of that centre midfield partnership?
It's difficult, isn't it? I think, firstly, I probably wouldn't start him. I'd definitely bring him off the bench. But in conversation about starting him, I think you've got to probably say Johnny Howson. But it's tough either way, because we have seen them two play really well together and they complement each other incredibly well, both Howson and Hackney. But I just don't think they had a great game yesterday. Just on the sort of subject of the game, I thought their first touches are usually very, very solid, and they're able to get each other out of difficult, tight positions. And we see that first touch, really slick one-touch passing moves, but we just didn't really see it yesterday. It didn't come off. I would probably say Howson for me.
Yeah, I think I'd probably have to agree with that, to be honest. Bit of a talking point later in the game. Paddy McNair took what looked like an elbow to the nose from Daryl Dike, bit of a flailing arm while he was trying to hold him off. He got stretchered off, and to be honest, that it looked horrendous. There was blood everywhere. I've got absolutely no problem with the fact that he was stretchered off after that. He didn't look like he knew where he was. Do you think we could have had a case for a red card there?
I didn't actually see it. All I saw was DK having a Paddy McCaw-esque run through our entire defence into the box. I've looked at it on Scout, but for some reason they don't have replays, so I only saw the sort of first look of it. I don't know if there's malicious intent there. I don't know if you saw a replay, Tom, whether you could sort of give me a better insight than what I saw, because I didn't actually see it at the time. I didn't know why Paddy McNair went down, but I don't know whether there was intent there from DK. I didn't really see a replay.
I don't think there was intent from what we saw on the replays. I genuinely think he was trying to hold the ball off, and it was just kind of clumsy that he did that. It didn't look like he'd intentionally swung his elbow back into McNair's face, but the injury, like I say, looked horrendous. And like I say, just no wonder that Paddy McNair was stretchered off after it, because
I haven't even seen any pictures of it either. It's almost like it didn't happen to me. I don't know what's going on. It's like this blackout.
Oh, honestly, I think you'd have to put the pictures in black and white and stuff for for how bad it was. Like I said, I don't think there was any intent, but there was a lot of conversation after the game where it was like, if there was VR in the championship, because the ref would have let that goal stand had he scored. And so if there was VR in the championship, that would have had to have been looked at, and potentially there could have been a red card there. I'm not too sure myself. Like I say, I couldn't see any intent there, but it was a pretty horrific facial injury, and I think if I'd have seen that in the Premier League and that had caused a red card, I really wouldn't have been surprised.
I think for me, incidents like that, I think it is about intent, and if it didn't look like that was his intention, then I don't know. I kind of feel like it's just one of those where he's tried to hold the ball up and he's just elbowed Paddy McNair straight in the nose. I don't know. It's a sort of fine line, isn't it? But I think intent is really important. If it didn't look like he intended that, then yeah, I don't think there's much of a conversation to be had, to be honest. But as I said, I didn't see a replay. I only saw it sort of as it happened in the game. And then when I looked back on Y-Scout, I don't know why Y-Scout doesn't have the replays this week, but it is what it is.
Yeah. So moving on now to podcast questions. Every week you get the chance to ask us a question, whether that's through our social media channels, email, or our Telegram chat. Whereas I'm sure Johnny says every week, we speak about everything other than football there. Although there has been quite a bit of football chat there recently, so yeah, that's definitely been been a bit of an improvement. First question there from Boro and Matt. If offered Stefan for 10 million at the end of the season, what would you do? Would you take it, negotiate, or pass?
Pass. 10 million. No chance.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I mean, potential for negotiation, do you think? Or do you think end of the season we try and find someone else who can kind of fit the system a bit better?
I don't know. It's
maybe
going to
not
be
better, but can do better.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because I think there are a lot of goalkeepers out there that play the way that Stefan does. This isn't a new introduction to football, and we do see a lot more goalkeepers now playing with the ball at their feet and having the responsibility to not only play sweeper, but to essentially be an additional outfield player, if you like. So I don't know if it'll be necessarily difficult to identify one, but obviously bringing one in might be a little bit more difficult. I mean, there's Michael Cooper at Plymouth who is injured at the moment, but I think is a very, very good goalkeeper who probably will play in the Premier League at some point very, very soon. So there's one potential option. With Stefan, I mean, I do quite like Stefan, and I think we've defended him all on this pod. But for 10 million, I'm not for me. 10 million, not for me.
Yeah, I think it'd be a bit of an expensive signing if we were going to try and get him permanently. Obviously, there was a brief rumour of that in January, but we never really heard anything more than that. And just on the subject there, you mentioned Michael Cooper. We obviously were looking in our pre-season transfer pods at goalkeepers who would fit that kind of mould. Michael Cooper came up. I know I'd suggested Liam Kelly in our chats, who's playing up in Motherwell. There are keepers out there who can do it, but I don't think any of us would ever seen Zach Stefan signing. I think we were looking at signings that we thought were realistic at the time, and that we wouldn't have ever expected that. So it's we do have a good goalkeeper there. He does fit the mold of what we want to do and how we want to play out from the back and stuff. It's just it would be very expensive to get him on a permanent. And then second question from Ted. Do you think Carrick's calm demeanour also means that we start some games slowly, such as today, Sheffield United and QPR?
I don't know if it's necessarily Carrick's calm demeanour. I don't really know what the issue is, unfortunately. I mean, if we take the West Brom goal, it's just sloppy from our defence, allowing the space in behind. And then Sheffield United, it's just a long throw that catches us out. And I think probably Darrell Lenihan's also a little bit suspect for that Ollie McBurney goal. I don't know. I think it's probably just key moments where Boro are unfortunately just, we talk about percentages a lot of that 1%, being that 1% better on this podcast. I think unfortunately in those moments we're just that 1% worse than usual. But as I said, and I'll reiterate in regards to our goal scoring exploits, we are usually, with the exception of yesterday and the Sunderland game, very good at scoring goals. So we are always in danger, just because football works like this sometimes, of not scoring and then therefore sort of giving ourselves an uphill battle, really. And we did that yesterday. But I don't necessarily think it's Carrick's calm demeanour that's causing these slow starts. And I wouldn't necessarily think that the slow starts are too much of an issue. They haven't been, really, with 5 victories on the spin before this, so maybe it's one to keep an eye on. But I don't really think it's so much of Carrick's calm demeanour.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when we went a goal down yesterday, personally, I was sat there thinking it's all right because we'll score 3 now. Like it's happened before, and then when that second goal went in, 90 seconds later, it was just kind of like, right, never seen it from 2 goals down just yet, but we do still have the potential to score. So maybe this is the time we see it. Obviously, it wasn't, but we're up against Carlos Corberan, who I don't think we ever really seem to have too much luck against, barring that decent win at Huddersfield last season. And was it Wilder's first win, that one?
It was, yeah. They were a mess. I remember looking at their forum that day, and they were all saying Corberan out. This is an embarrassment. We're going to get relegated. And then look at them a few months later, like 5 months later, they got into the Championship playoff finals. That's weird. Well, just a point of what you mentioned there. When obviously being in the away end yesterday, when we went 2 goals down, obviously you gutted because it is, you're sort of trying to climb a mountain there, getting back into the game. But I'm quite a pessimistic fan at times. And when Boro do find themselves in those situations, like Cardiff, for example, earlier on in the season where we conceded 3 goals in one half, I usually tend to think, right, game over, that's it. Like, that's the opinion that I have. And I don't blame anybody for sort of thinking that yesterday. But I sort of had a very different opinion, and I was quite calm, much like how Carrick is. And I thought, we'll be fine. We'll still be fine. If we get 1 goal back, I'll be pretty confident. But unfortunately, in the second half, we had that very lengthy break where Paddy Minell obviously was gushing blood straight out of his nose, which, what you said, wasn't a particularly great sight. And I think that just sort of took the sting out of the game for not only West Brom. Obviously they were on the attack at that point or just before that point, but for Boro as well. So those stoppages never help. But I will say I hope Paddy McNair is okay. I've had some monster nosebleeds, although not elbows straight in the nose, but they're not nice. And hopefully his nose is in one piece.
Oh, that was great time. And there's been an ice cream van just outside. Literally the only time this has ever happened, and it would be mid-recording the pod. So...
I think I caught the last bit of that, actually, that little chime at the end. Oh, we got an ice cream van.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be out there right now if we weren't recording. But
Wait, but why is an ice cream van out on the 26th of February?
I have no idea. Probably just to disrupt this pod, to be honest. 'Cause... like I say, I never see ice cream vans on this street.
It's literally still winter. Like, pack up and go home. Come back in June.
Oh, what time. And going to move on to the praise and place in a second, where we won't be giving praise to an ice cream van or an ice flake 99. But before we do that, I just want to give a quick shout out to our fundraiser for MNDA. Check this morning. I was just giving pages up to 90% of the £3,000 target that we have for the MND fundraiser. It's obviously a great charity, really close to our hearts on the podcast. So we definitely recommend anyone to donate whatever you can to the fundraiser and help people suffering with awful disease. Moving on to the praise and place, which is the place that we give praise to. I'm trying to attempt what Johnny says there, but I would always get tongue-tied.
Pink hair.
We'll give praise to Dana's pink hair and a nice flake 99. So, Dana, who, if anyone, is in the praise and place for you this week?
Mr. Whippy.
Ryan Giles.
I wish. No, you know what? It's difficult because I don't think anybody had a great game yesterday. Obviously, our possession dominance was very obvious, but I thought we had a poor showing at the Hawthorns. So I don't really know who I could give praise to. Maybe Aaron Ramsey's cameo. I think there's certain qualities of his game that I think he looks quite bright, brave, positive, but I think we're clutching. Really, I'll give it to my cousin Jo. Bumped into Jo before the game, and it was her daughter's birthday, Carissa. So yeah, I'll give it to Joe and Carissa. We love bumping into random members of the malt bands. So yeah, we're clutching at straws. I'm gonna have to give it to Joe and Carissa.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a difficult one to pick for this week. Like you said, there wasn't too much in terms of positives on the pitch, and maybe Aaron Ramsey is the only one who deserves a little bit of praise yesterday. I think, yeah, probably one of the only positive performances I saw. One of the only other ones, sorry, was Akpom trying to get involved when he was on the ball and being quite physical, but I think that would be a very kind of like low bar for the praise and place this week. So yeah, it's difficult. We'll maybe put Aaron Ramsey in there and your cousin, as you mentioned, and Clarissa. So.
What a great praise and place this week.
Yeah, it's not been too full this week, but hopefully it will be next week when we welcome Paulince's Reading to the Riverside. The Royals are coming to the Riverside, off the back of a 3-1 win against Blackpool. But we spoke to Alex from the Elm Park Royals podcast to find out more about the Royals this season.
Hey, it's Alex from Elm Park Royals here, just to give you a bit of a lowdown on Reading and how our season's been, and basically what you need to look out for next weekend. We're sitting just inside the bottom half, I think, as of Sunday morning. And our season's been okay this season. It's a really odd season to try and analyse because we were expected to finish in the bottom 3. No doubt everybody had us to be relegated, and yet we'd never really ever troubled the relegation battle this season. We've always been fairly comfortable. We're 13 points, I think, currently off the relegation zone. 9 points off the playoffs. We're almost the definition of mid-table this season, and that's despite the fact that we've had a weird season watching Reading. There's been times when the style of play has been really kind of derided by Reading fans, and performances have felt like they've not been that good, and yet at home we've been excellent, but on the road we've been really poor. We've only won 3 times away from home this season so far, yet we've won 10 at home. So it's a really strange situation watching Reading this season. In terms of key players, Tom Ince is our best player this season. He's been absolutely fantastic. He's got a 90-minute engine, never stops, and he's generally our best creator. We've also had a good performance yesterday in our win against Blackpool from Yaku Mete, who's not really featured very much this season, but we changed our formation and our style yesterday. We've generally been playing a 5 at the back system this season. However, yesterday we went to a 4 at the back and played 4-3-3 or 4-1-4-1, depending on who you asked. With him back in the side, we looked a lot less direct and a lot less long ball, just pumping it to Andy Carroll, and there was a bit more playmaking ability in the side. So if he starts, that will be interesting to see how he does next weekend. However, against Boro, I think it might be a case of going back to a 5 at the back system next weekend. So Thomas is probably going to be the one to look out for next weekend in terms of chance creation for us. I know Boro obviously lost against West Brom yesterday, so I'm not quite as pessimistic as maybe I would have been beforehand, but I think it's still going to be a really difficult game for Reading. I'd be very surprised if we took anything from it. It's going to take a really good performance from us to pick up a point, I think. Boro flying, so high into Michael Carrick. And I think I'll probably predict a 2-0 loss. Boro to pick up all 3 points. And that's probably being a little bit optimistic. On the road has not been a lot of fun following Reading this season.
Well, thanks to Alex from Elm Park Royals for that. Very pessimistic there. Some key notes on Reading. Tom Ince is top of their scoring and assist chart with 9 goals and 4 assists, and he's also got their highest FOTMOB rating this season with 7.28. So that father-son Tom Ince and Paul Ince duo working quite well once again. Yaku Mete, the fan favourite mentioned there in the clip, was unplayable and one of the best wingers in the league, according to some Reading fans. We've got Dean Buzanis, expected to start in goal next week with Joe Lumley, unfortunately not eligible to play.
Shade.
We probably should be expecting an Andy Carroll goal because it always seems to happen. But he's usually used as an outlet to hold the ball up and bring Mate Hoylett into the game, and Tommins usually plays in a free roam position to try and bring overloads. We know what Alex thinks of what his score prediction is. Dana, what's your thoughts on the game, and what would your prediction be?
I don't think this is going to be a particularly good watch. I do think that they will set up in a low block, much like how they did last season. And I actually thought last season it was obviously the game where Matt Crooks pops up with the late double, who wins the game for us. I actually thought that in that game they defended pretty decently. It was just that they tired towards the end, and obviously Isaiah Jones did what Isaiah Jones was doing very often last season and unlocked the door. But I'm looking at FOTMob now, and Reading averaged the lowest percentage of attendance in their games this season, 41.5%, rock bottom. So I do think, from what I've seen, what I've heard of Reading, they do like to try to contain the team and then hit them on the counter-attack. And probably with Andy Carroll up front as well, if they do get a corner, they're looking to, try to get him in decent positions to be able to try to score. I mean, a bit on their away form, as Alex alluded to as well. Only Huddersfield have picked up less points on the road than Reading this season. 11 points the Royals have acquired on their travels. So, you know what's coming, Tom. You know what's coming. But no, that's not happening. I've decided that's not happening. So I think it's going to be a sticky game for Boro, where we do see a little bit of similarities between this and the West Brom game, whereby a team will try to compact the match and try to essentially shut off all of the key areas of the pitch for us and try to limit our key players. But I do think we will get the job done. We are very good at the Riverside. It's Fortress Riverside once more, which I absolutely love and cherish. So I think we'll win. I'm going to say I'm going to say 2-0, but the way that it'll go is it'll be 1-0 for a while. Reading will tie it, and we'll get that second really late in the game.
I mean, from my prediction, I think I'm going to go with 4-0. Don't ask me why, but I want to see some sort of bounce back from that 2-0 loss against West Brom. I think it's going to be a tough game trying to break them down first. But I think if we can score early and force them to open up a little bit, then we can create the chances to score more, and hopefully we can recreate some of the higher scoring wins that we've had kind of earlier in the season. The 4-1 against Wigan, where Akpom got his hat-trick. Really, really want to see Akpom get that 20th as well.
Ooh, yes.
Boro posted something earlier this week saying, he's part of an elite club now to score 20 in all competitions. And it's just like, yes, still on 19 in the league, though. Like, we just want him to get that one more league goal just to say that he's done it. And, we've had that striker to hit 20 league goals again. So 4-0, and I'm going to go with Akpom getting at least one of them.
Hopefully. You know what I was thinking during the game yesterday? I was like, if Akpom scores in this game, then in a way, I'd much prefer if he didn't and just sort of, score against Reading in front of the Riverside, because a somewhat consolation type goal in a game that wasn't particularly great for Boro, for that to be the one that gets him 20 league goals would be, it would take the shine off it a little bit. So I want him to hit 20 league goals at the Riverside. And you know what? I think he can do it. I really do. I think he could do it next week. But yeah, bold with that prediction. I think I went bold a few. It was for the QPR game, wasn't it? And didn't get there, but I think I was close.
Yeah, I think you were. I think at the moment 3-1 would have been the banker up until yesterday. 3-1 and then maybe Akpom to score, and then as long as I keep betting on it, it'll probably never happen again, so I won't be.
Yeah.
But
it was Blackpool. It was Blackpool. I said 4-0 and we won 3-0. So it was close. It was close.
Yeah, very, very close. Hopefully it's not going to be close next week, though. And that is it for today. So thanks for joining us, Dana, as always. And thanks to listeners and anyone watching us YouTube. Thanks for listening and watching. And always, bloody hell, I've messed that up. Thanks for listening and watching, as always. Don't forget to rate us 5 stars and subscribe on YouTube and podcast providers. It helps us get found by other Boro fans. Boro halted at the Hawthorns yesterday and leaves us looking for redemption against the Royals next week. This was the Boro Breakdown, and that was all your matchday chatter in a pod. Up the Boro Breakdown.